To err is human. A quote from a poet from the 1700s. If you have an error in your life, congrats. You're human. The most basic human thing to do is to fail. Every human has failed before you. Every human will fail after you. It is part of what makes us grow. The reason we evolved into what we are today, and the reason we will continue to evolve, is because of the failures of ourselves and others. You are typically not just born a winner. You have to work towards it. The greatest athletes I've ever seen do have some genetic advantageous qualities to them, but there's a lot of hard work that has to be put in. You can be 6'7" and maybe have the genetic length to make you compete with LeBron, but LeBron's been studying and breathing basketball since he was a child. You have to put in that work. It is rare to be just born a winner. Many people like a LeBron have failed. Many people like a Muhammad Ali failed. Many people have failed. Look at Trump. Trump won the election and he has ran plenty of times before. He then won it again after already losing. One of my favorite former UFC fighters, Demetrius Johnson, talked about how he would always lose in the gym. Even though he had this unbeaten streak in the UFC, he talked about that losing was just part of the gym experience. You'll lose to guys every single day. This is Mighty Mouse, one of the greatest fighters of all time. And he was losing. What? Like, I can't even comprehend that. So when I think about losing, when I think about all the failure that comes with the world that we live in, especially if you're a smart individual and you look at yourself as someone who's nuanced, the political spectrum that we're dealing with right now is terrifying. You have a right-wing authoritarian who is being celebrated by other right-wing authoritarians. This winner of the election of 2024 is not this simple, clean-cut, I'm just going to raise taxes, good luck. It's more nuanced than that. There's a false elector scheme. There's the celebration of a sexual liable rapist. There are talks of mass disruption for every single country that I think works with the US. It's a very scary, shitty feeling to lose, and it's fair because what we saw in this election was that if we lose, we could have a lot of disruption. It was scary to lose, not because we were just terrifying of being wrong, but I think it's a lot of being right. There's a good reason we do have a fear of losing. Sometimes losing does make you better, and in the case of the 2024 election, I hope that's the case. But in times, losing could also just be the end of it. If you're a plankton trying to survive and you lose to a whale, you die. So there's a good reason to be fearful of losing. There's a good reason to really understand the gravity of losing. I don't see a world where people are going to take this loss and continue to be stupid. I just can't. I think many of people in 2016, I felt this sort of, shit, and you just fell to the floor. You lost. I didn't even want to get up. Whereas in 2024, maybe it's my maturity, but I didn't feel that same painful loss. It's just more of like, damn. But it's fightable. I mean, I think it's even worse in this case, but it's fightable. I think the 2016 loss, we had no reason to be worried. With 2025, we have good reason, but I think it's also like knowing what to do and not to do. I think with losing, you kind of can't comprehend. I can't tell you how many times I'm playing a board game, I'm losing, and then I kind of change my personality because it just sucks. If we are to continue this path of dumb people winning, maybe I would be more pessimistic. So many people are involved in politics and trying to do their best. I think they outweigh the dumbasses. I'm not saying it's completely positive. I look at a lot of policies and I hear how people get to them and I go, that's a little weird. So I know we're not fully there. I know we're not at the point where I think we are a society where we do have our best foot forward. I don't believe we're there yet, but I think we are getting there. We're slowly kind of figuring it out. I mean, there's definitely a lot of growing pains. And I think with like the AI stuff is terrifying, how many old people seem to be falling in to these weird rabbit holes, and the rabbit holes themselves are becoming more mainstream. Alex Jones isn't just this right-wing crazy guy, he's sort of the norm. So there is a path that we're going to take. The loss that we have in front of us can proceed in a good way. We could learn from this. We could figure out what to do from here. I can't sit here and say it's with confidence that I think we are going to elegantly get through this. I'm saying a lot of fluff. I'm saying a lot of crazy shit because I think I'm trying to comprehend it myself. But there is beauty to this. There is beauty to the fact that if you lose, you know where you can watch the film and see where you messed up at. I also think there is stuff to be worried about. I think when we look at the election, people voted off of vibes. You looked at these polls of people saying that they voted because the prices of groceries, and even though that the trajectory was going down, a post-COVID world, people were so quick to give Trump a pass because of COVID, but then they wouldn't give Biden the same because of COVID vibe and mindset. So that's terrifying, that even though we had a deflation trajectory, statistically speaking, this is just numbers, I'm not pulling it because I like Biden, we were looking on a better path. They still said, nah, vibes. I feel like I can't afford stuff. And I don't blame that. I think people can afford stuff. But I also think the path that they have taken to vote for Trump isn't the smartest path. Or there's no real like substance of why I would pick this guy to help me get out of this debt hole I'm in. Tariffs? Like that just doesn't make sense. And we saw whatever already happened with him, how disruptive he was, and not for the better. How we did have a prosperous economic time during his presidency, but it was on the backs of an Obama getting us out of a recession, and no one praises Obama. They say, oh, he was bad. Even though you're praising Trump's 2016 economy, that was a direct result of an Obama economy. I don't think people are smart, and that scares me. But I hope that maybe this loss shows. I can't see a world where someone voted for Trump and they don't go, ugh, maybe that wasn't a good choice. I mean, I know we already went through this with 2016 and they should have learned their lesson, but I also understand that with COVID and with the sort of wherewithal that some people don't have to understand that like 2016 was from an Obama recession and da 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 da. Like I don't think they're thinking like that. Advancements we made in the past decade, we're slowly coming to that. I think Trump is going to win again in 2028, unfortunately. I think the loss isn't necessarily going to be a clear path. I think there's going to be a lot of shaky water for us. I don't think it's going to be a clear, by 2028, the liberals are going to win and things are going to get better. It never works like that. There's nuance here. I believe in this loss. It'll take some time. And it might not be this generation, but the next. I think a lot of these older people may have to, learn eventually, but maybe never learn. Whereas maybe the generation after might come to their senses in their older age. But I think it's the younger people who are going to have to pick up the slack. And I think we're already seeing that. I think even though it's not clear cut, this many people are liberals, this many people are right wings, I think there's more nuance. I see that there's a lot of less partisan hacks within younger generations. They're still definitely there. But I think a lot of people are like, well, I just don't like this. And I think there's systems in place that could maybe give a better representation for voices, maybe less money in politics, a ranked choice voting system. And I think I can't see a world where the current generation sees the situation we're in. There was a Biden trying to do a student loan forgiveness, and then there was a Trump saying, screw that. And I think young people will recognize that. I think there's economic hardship, and when you hear about a child tax credit or infrastructure bills like that Biden passed, the young people will remember this. And I think it's going to lead them to say, well, look, maybe the blue versus red is a stupid mindset, but I think we should have infrastructure bills in place. I think we should worry about our water and climate, and these old people may just be leaving us to deal with it, but I think we will deal with it. I don't think loss is a clear-cut win. I don't think, when I look at it in my sports analogy, when somebody like the Golden State loses and they have to rebuild, they obviously have the super team, and then they beat the Cavs. Will we as Americans have that same sort of clear comparable situation? No. But I think there are situations where we can pull from the sort of fictitious world of movies or the nonfiction sports world where people do figure out their holes and watch the film and see where they messed up. There are plenty of fighters that I watch in the UFC where they learn from their lessons after fighting a guy 5, 6 times and they finally figured him out. Doesn't mean they won forever, but they have that win and you take those steps forward. And I think that's what makes a great champ. Someone like a George St. Pierre won against many of the people who beat him after he lost. And I think that's what made a great champ. Is it's okay to lose, but it's how you come back and it's how you rebuild. And you see a lot of people who don't have that champ mentality. When they lose and they try to get their second chance, they fail again. And that's fine. I mean, to even get there is an honor. But if we're talking about GOATs, if we're talking about the greatest fighters, or we're talking about the greatest sports, the greatest teams, the greatest politics, the greatest that, we have to keep in mind that if you want to be great, which we should be in this country that is great, in a world and in a group of people from the East Coast to West Coast, we have such great, strong, smart people. We are the leading innovator in this world. We are the strongest military in this world. And I do have my gripes against the U.S. by all means. But I would never want to see this country burn down because we have so many beautiful people. And I think our cultural mix and crazy history makes us a strong powerhouse that is here to stay, I hope, if we learn from our losses. If we look at where we went wrong, if we look at who spends the most in a budget deficit and furthers that deficit, if we look to see who continues us in these wars, if we look to see who gives the tax cuts to the rich and makes the poor people suffer, that's how we learn. Will we learn is the question, but the plan is out there. The loss is out there for people to learn from.